for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Notification has been published. We're up to approval of the minutes of June 23rd. Any comments, questions, corrections? If not, do I have a motion for acceptance? Here. Second? Second. All right. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Objections? All right. Okay. At this point, we usually allow for any citizen comments. If anyone would like to make any comments in general. Okay. Old business items. We're first one, an update on the representation of ex officio military seat on the committee. Do we have a further status on that? No, I guess from Mary Ryan Krieger was following that up.
Yes, recommended to
Yeah. Okay, well, since she's not here, I guess we'll just pass on that one and we'll follow up and try to give you an update next month. Update on the discussion about coordination of public safety, old business. That was going to be a county staff study. And we're talking about the issue of consolidation of firehouse and EMS services. Is there any update or any further information on that?
Well, I can provide a short update on a project between the city and the county. And that is an MOU for the study, design, and construction documents for a joint fire EMS facility located at our current fire headquarters, Station 1. And so that would be relocation of emergency response services for the EMS services on Depot Road, combining with our fire services at our headquarters building. So this is step one of the process. We will bring it to our council for approval on September 12th. And I understand it's working its way through the county as well, and it's already been through committee, so.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments?
I just want to thank the county and thank our staff and their staff for bringing this forward, something we've been talking about for a couple of years. I think it makes a lot of sense. I mean, we often brag about the joint fire department we have with Fort Royal and how we're able to deliver a much higher quality of service for a much better value than what either of us would be able to provide alone. And I think the similar trajectory is happening with fire and EMS. So.
I think if you were to go back in the history with this committee to the first meeting, you would probably find out that it was a agenda item back then and a task item. It's been following along for as long as this group has been around.
Well, great, good news there. All right, did I see Mary step in? Oh, there you are.
Wow.
We had just jumped over your
Oh,
issue.
perfect.
Is that perfect that we jumped over it?
Yeah, for now, yeah.
Do you have anything you want to provide in way of update on the
Yes.
military ex officio?
Yes, we are able to be an ex officio member. It'll probably usually either be myself or David Trail. So the CO or his representative.
Okay, and we were deferring whether or not we're gonna have public comment based on that membership. So do you want to discuss that now as they make a decision about allowing that, or are we gonna wait until there's the dissolution of planning commission?
I think it's probably appropriate to talk about it. Our council is going to consider, I think, standing up of our new planning commission on September 12th. It's been to the MBC twice now. Staff's working on fine tuning that ordinance to get it in front of council. Take a couple of readings, so we've got another month or so worth of formal processes, and then have to find membership and a whole host of things. But I imagine it will take some time here to add it as an ex officio. I'm certainly supportive of adding military as an ex officio seat, and having an opportunity for public comment to be a standing item on this agenda if everybody thinks it's appropriate.
Okay, do you want to vote on that now, or want to defer that until?
Well, I think we actually, they're not listed as an ex officio in the original, or are they? And there hasn't been a representative. I'm trying to remember, Ed, I can't remember. They were listed and they haven't been, so we don't need to vote on them being an ex officio.
No.
We've just got a member assigned. So I guess the vote we really need to take, Stephen, is when the MPC shuts down the following month, it moves to here. And we keep it in place until it shuts down. I'll make a motion of that, in that way, that when it comes to military public comment, once the Metropolitan Planning Commission shuts down and Port Royal and the City of Beaufort stand up their own planning commission, that public comment moves to this group at the Northern Regional Plan meeting.
Second. Any discussion?
Is there any reason to wait?
I think we should wait till the others are stood down.
I think because there's going to be enough announcements about what's happening in the planning commission, and the public's going to know that there's two separate commissions standing up, and here are the changes. I think it makes it a simpler message. And as you know, sitting in the chair and me sitting in that center chair, all the time I think once I had public comment. There wasn't really anything going on. Right now, it does get active when something changes on the basis. It will get very active in that way. So I don't see the rush to do it and do it. I think doing it all in a uniform manner just seems to make sense to me.
Okay. Further discussion? All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any dissent? No. All right. Good. Okay, I guess we're up to our new business and representatives from Beaufort Jasper Water and Sewer Authority. We've got quite a few, which is great. If we want to have a board meeting.
Can we go around and only get everyone's name?
Well, that's what I'm going to do.
Okay, thank you.
You can have a board meeting probably with the folks you got in here now and you have the quorum. Why don't we go around and just kind of quickly, if you would introduce yourselves. Yes, ma'am.
Sarah Linkmore, Deputy General Manager at BJWSA.
All right, welcome.
Rob McPhee, board member, Beaufort Jasper Water
Yes,
Service.
sir.
Greg Padgett, chairman of the board, Beaufort Jasper. Andy Kinghorn, vice chairman, Beaufort Jasper Board.
Verna Arnett, General Manager.
Paul Vincent, chief of engineering.
Day like 12 on the job or something now?
Yeah, pretty close.
Are there any,
Over there in the back too.
are there any folks? Yes, sir, right
Tommy
here.
Swing,
Yes,
Beaufort Jasper.
all right. Well, good, well, welcome. Do you want me to get the rest of this point? If you would, just in the back row, if you would just introduce yourselves.
Stephanie Rossi, Elcog.
Noah Krebs, town of Port Royal.
Kurt Freeze, city of Beaufort.
Grant McClure with the Coastal Conservation League.
Robert Merchant, Beaufort County Planning.
Kristen Forbes, Beaufort County Planning.
Michael Gagliardi, Elcog.
Welcome. All right, where do we start here? There were a number of questions that were,
I think they have a presentation.
well, you do have a presentation. Well, there it is right up there.
Yeah, if you would like, we could go over this and
Sure.
I'd be happy to entertain any questions.
All right.
Kind of gives me an opportunity to introduce myself. I'm Verna Arnett, as I said, and I started here on May 1st, so I rolled into town on April 30th. And it's been a whirlwind. It's been great. This is a beautiful area. And I'm really happy to be here, happy to be in this meeting because I've heard some names and it's great. I heard put a name and a face to it. So I've heard these names and it's great to see your faces. So again, thanks for having us here. And I'll be introducing Paul. I'm going to kick this off. We have a short presentation. I promise it'll be brief. And Paul's going to present the kind of the engineering development things that we're doing, the capital side of it. And since Paul and I have been here, 3 months, you've been here 12 days, and Sarah's gonna give us a grade at the end of this to see how we do on our presentation. So she's the person, the BJWSA employee. So I'm not sure who advances the slides, if I can hold it up. Just a little bit about us. We cover are authorized by the state of South Carolina, to Beaufort and Jasper counties. We don't serve all of the counties, but we do serve about 750 square miles with 2 water treatment plants, 8 wastewater treatment plants, 4 laboratories, and over 200 employees. We serve about 171,000 in population, 65,000 connections. So next slide. In our water system summary, we have one water source, the Savannah River, which I'm a big fan of river water sources because they are constantly changing, and that's a really good thing. This is a high quality source, and we're very fortunate in this area. Of course, there's a lot of water. We're fortunate to have the Savannah River. We have a total treatment capacity of 39 million gallons. The Chelsea water treatment plant, which is over at 170 and Snake Road is the primary plant that serves northern Beaufort County. The Purrysburg plant, 15 MGD, that's currently under construction for a doubling in size, and that serves primarily the southern part of our service area. Distribution system, we have over 1,500 miles of water main, 10 booster stations, fire hydrants, valves, obviously. Next slide. And the wastewater summary, we treat about 10.5 million gallons a day, and you'll notice that the water plant capacity is much bigger. A lot of irrigation happens here, so that's where a lot of the water goes. It doesn't make it to the wastewater plants. Those plants don't need to be as big. We do have 8 treatment plants, 2 to 3 major plants. The big plant on this side of the river is the Broad Rivers in Port Royal. And they're very nice plants too. I went and toured that plant. I was very impressed with that. The collection system is a little bit smaller than where the water extends. We have about 1,000 miles of collection system, gravity sewers and force main, over 500 lift stations, which I was amazed to see that many lift stations, but I realized it's all flat here, and where I come from we had a lot of hills, but it leads to some challenges with the design of sewage and collection systems as far as getting that water to the wastewater to the treatment plant. And it provides for a lot of pumping, and there's a lot of challenges with that. We also have some solar arrays, which we have at our treatment plants to help offset some of our energy usage, because of wastewater plants and water plants, the big things are pumps, and then anything aerators to aerate the system to accomplish the treatment. We have biological treatment, UV, chemical disinfection. We do a lot with reclaimed water. Some of the water that's treated goes to surface water discharges, and the balance, we have the Great Swamp, which is where our Cherry Point plant discharges to. The balance of a good amount of our effluent goes to golf courses for irrigation, so it is reused, which I think is another fantastic thing in this area. The amount of reuse that's going on is very impressive. Next slide. So preparing for the future, and Paul is going to take over and give you some insight into what we're doing, planning to go forward.
Hey, good morning, everybody. I'm Paul Vincent, again, Chief of Engineering. As you've kind of heard, I'm a little bit new to the Water Sewer Authority, but about almost 2 years ago, I bought a house down here, moved my family down here, so I do have some familiarity with what's going on from a utility perspective, just because I've spent my entire career in the world of utilities, doing engineering and that sort of thing. I am a licensed professional engineer in the state of South Carolina. I'm excited to be here today to kind of talk to you about some of the things we're doing. One of the things that attracted me to the authority was a vision and a mission to try to improve things, as we've seen a lot of growth down here. And quite frankly, I've seen, like, as you start out, you're kind of running at a certain pace because that's the level of sophistication you need. And then as things grow, you need new tools and new systems in places and new policies. And we're in that process of kind of trying to vision ourselves in the future, and what do we need to do to get there to provide a much better level of service. And a lot of what I'm going to talk about here today is kind of going to echo those same sort of sentiments. I've got some great staff members and team members and board members that I think are all very supportive of the things I'm talking about and where our direction is going as a utility. First off, you're probably aware that we do master plans, and that's because a lot of our infrastructure takes a long time to build and it's very expensive. And then that infrastructure for us is permanent. So much like you look at your road systems as though those are permanent pieces of infrastructure, we want to try to be as cost effective in our pipelines and pump stations and treatment plants, just to help keep the rates as low as we possibly can, and then we feel better about our operations side of life. So we do a regular master plan, and I'm not going to read each of these comments to you. From a capital improvements program standpoint, over the last 5 years, we've been running around the $30 or $40 million mark as kind of our goal or our target each year to deliver. We try to keep our capital improvements program relatively level because that helps keep our rates as low as possible and keeps them right at a nice level platform. But as I say that, I'll tell you over the next 4 years, we are looking at a much more robust capital program than what we've been doing over the last 5 years. So while it's been a lot of work for our staff to try to get there over the last 5 years, we are 3 times plus that over the next 4 years from a capital improvements program. Capital improvements, those are our pipes going in the ground, or pump stations going in the ground, or treatment plants expansion, all those hard pieces of infrastructure that are super critical to us. So we've got a few of those key projects listed here. Honestly, if I pulled up our capital improvements plan, there's about 150 projects on it. We talked about it for 3 more weeks and still not get through them all. So it's that level of investment that we're doing. If you want to hit the next slide for me. Thank you. So we got a map here. We just try to kind of focus it in the area that you folks might be interested in seeing. This has not got anything to do with our capital improvements projects. These are simply development projects that have occurred over the last 5 years. I mean, this is not new information, I don't think, for anybody in the room, but we've seen a lot of development coming to the area. For us as a utility, that puts a lot of pressure on us to expand and plan and try to be on the forefront of capacity issues and processing. And like I talked about very early, just getting our policies and procedures to the next level so we're ready to accommodate this stuff. It's been stressful for us just because we're being forced to grow because things are happening so fast. To that point, we're looking at some system improvements and some tool improvements and trying to get to a new spot. If you want to go ahead and give me the next slide, we kind of zoom in just a little bit better. I'm going to go right past that one because I'm not sure, but it looked really blurry to me. All right, so here I have a few of just kind of our high points of things we're trying to do internally just to improve our own systems. Now, as engineers, we use abbreviations for everything. It means pretty much nothing to the rest of the world. So DPPM, does anyone in the room know what that means? P for Jasper, people keep your hands down. Anybody else know what that means? Yeah. So this is our development procedures and program manual. Did I get that right? Close? Close. Close. So what happens is a developer will come to us and he wants to do a subdivision or a gas station or whatever it might be. We have a procedure manual that reflects what DHEC requirements are for us, because certainly there's a framework for permitting and that process, but it also reflects kind of our requirements so that we can get their infrastructure into our standards so they aren't just using the wrong pipes or valves or something like that. It's something we're familiar with and want to be able to maintain, as well as like getting the record keeping piece to us so that we know in the future, 10 years down the road when a line breaks, how are we going to go maintain that? So this kind of prescribes some of those things. Now, I'll tell you just in a moment of vulnerability here, this has been a little point of contention with the development community for us over the last, I'll say, year and a half. And we are working hand in hand. We have working teams developed with, put together with developers and their professional representatives to try to look at this from a standpoint of how can we streamline that process. Certainly we have our requirements, everybody understands that, but what can we do to kind of simplify things and make it go a little bit quicker, and then use some of that input that we're getting from that to help inform our capital improvements program so that we can be more responsive with our infrastructures and capacities. I'm not going to read all these things to you, but we're in the process of doing a lot of other improvements in that system. I'm going to jump down here to number 4. We're working hard to try to develop a couple extra tools to expedite work for developers, consulting engineers. And part of that is just making some of our information available to them. We certainly have our own record keeping that we're doing. Part of that we kind of keep close to the vest because it does have some, I'll call it, important information for us that we just don't want to put out in the public preview. I'm sure you guys can understand some of it is related to military bases and certain critical pieces of infrastructure that I don't want going overseas to one of our enemies. But beyond some good security measures there, we do want to try to make some of that information available in the construction industry so those folks can kind of see where our infrastructure is, maybe see where our future steps are going to be, so they can kind of be working hand in hand. And certainly with the folks around this table, we want to be hand in hand with partnerships on where you guys want to take your own respective communities.
What does subscription-based mean?
So that's something we're kind of still working through, but the thought process is that we may make some of this more sensitive information available on a subscription basis to consulting engineers, with the idea being that we're not just going to get like a random realtor to come in and get some information that they don't really need. Instead, it's going to be the professionals that we don't know what that price point's gonna be yet, we're working through that, but maybe it's a couple $1,000s per year. But then what we do is we provide them quite a bit of extra data that they wouldn't have had otherwise from us. So if they wanna sit down with some of their development partners in their own conference rooms and scroll through our facilities and kind of see what we have and where we're going, then they can make better informed decisions kind of on the front end of their planning process.
Is that information that you can share with the local governments?
I think we could,
Right
yeah.
now, I think we are sharing data back and forth between the municipalities. Yeah, we have individual agreements with all of them that y'all are sharing and we're sharing, the GIS data.
Yeah, I think the idea with the subscription, also part of it is just to make sure we're limiting access and the
Right.
people that need to know it are the people that are looking at it.
Right.
And then we'll have to sign NDAs
Okay.
with that to keep it, the security of it's important
Sure.
to us.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Yeah, I may just finish up here with point 6. I got a couple board members in the room and they haven't seen my full vision for where this is going, so I may give a little bit of it right now and they may beat me up later, but
More questions to come.
that's great. I love questions. So you heard me earlier speak to our capital improvements program and how it's about to do one of these numbers. So we are looking to add some staff in the capital improvements area. Quite frankly, it's been a little bit reactionary on our part over the last few years, and we want to get away from that model where we're much more focused on the future and trying to plan for things. And we are looking strategically at adding some additional services inside of our house that we haven't done before. This is back to my earlier points of trying to see that, hey, we're maturing as a utility. We want to provide a little bit different level of service, and some of those things are related to planning. I know I got plenty of planners in the room. For us, because our infrastructure is permanent and long-term, we want to get it sized right the first time, not come in and get a straw-sized pipe and realize later that we needed something 3 times that size and pay for it over the course of 4 or 5 different, we just don't want to do that. We want to get it right sized the first time because it's most effective for us. We also want to be able to look at some efficiencies. Today, it's very difficult for us to look at efficiencies on pumps and pipes because we don't have a lot of that planning information that we really need to be able to do that. So that's kind of a pivot point for us, and I'm going to look at these guys. They're probably all going to give me funny looks here later today, but we are trying to do a little, or we hope to do a little more focus on that planning piece that then informs our capital program better and helps us maybe on the development side so that we're out in front of some of that stuff rather than just tail wagging the dog type of situation. Also from a staffing standpoint, quite frankly, we've just got a lot of development pressure coming at us. So I'm looking at some additional staff in that area to try to do things for us. And then a final area that's kind of new for us is to this point, we've relied heavily on the consulting engineering industry to help us with our sewer modeling. And having spent quite a bit, basically my whole career in that world, I can tell you that no 2 consultants are the same. And typically, when you ask a land development guy to do sewer modeling, that goes right over his head. It's not his area of expertise. Now, there are a few firms here in this area that they have like another department or division inside of themselves that may have that skill set, and that's great. But when we're dealing with 24 or 25 different consulting firms, they are not. Some of them are not able to provide that service to the level that we would want it to. So we want to try to bring that piece of that back inside for ourselves. So we're doing our own modeling, and that really kind of ties to everything I've got on the board here. So that helps us have that vision down the road. We can evaluate alternatives on piping and pump station locations and really try to get our infrastructure to the point it needs to be. Now, all these things I've talked about, it's not going to happen tomorrow. I mean, these are year type efforts for us to get there. Honestly, I feel like even on the modeling, it may take us 2 years just to get the model created. And then we can start doing that analysis and those evaluations. So we've got a vision. I think it's very well shared by everyone in the room. I have a couple of board guys, they haven't heard every bit of this that I'm talking about, but I'm sure they're right there with us too. And we're hopeful that we get to a point here in the next couple of years that what you see from us as an authority is different than what you saw 5 years ago. So with that, I'll just kind of open it up to questions or comments or thoughts that you guys may have.
Mr. Chairman. Yes, Paul, thanks for a good presentation. I guess the biggest concerns I'm hearing from the development industry is not so much on the water supply side, it's on the sewer supply side. And so I know we've had a conversation already in the sewer system modeling. Any further clarity on like the timing to do the modeling and then to sort of understand where those new infrastructure improvements will need to be implemented?
Yeah, so I don't have a perfect crystal ball on this stuff, but every day we get a little bit smarter. And we did advertise for a consulting firm to come in and help us develop the model right out of the gate because we just don't have the manpower now in-house to develop it. We just got those solicitations in and finished yesterday, so we'll be evaluating exactly what that consultant can do for us here in the very next couple of weeks or month. My vision for that is to get a couple of staff members that are going to be dedicated to that process. So as that consultant's working and developing that model, we're right there alongside with them. Quasi getting trained with them as to how they're developing the model, but also like vetting the accuracy that's going into it and just really being a partner in that process. Until we have that consultant on board, I won't really have a good tight schedule. But because I've done this enough, I know the size of our systems. I've done modeling myself from zero to hero. This is probably a 2-year process, just to be realistic about it, to get that model developed and start going. My hope is that once we have that model developed, we're in a good spot with that consultant. We thank them for what they've done. Now it's our baby to run. And at that point, we can start running some of these alternatives that my heart gets excited about, which are efficiency related, O&M&R, operations, maintenance, and replacement cost savings. And sorry, that's the engineer abbreviation side of me. So I just we're getting there, right? I'm excited that we're headed the right direction. And honestly, a lot of that, I didn't have anything to do with that RFQ. That's the folks here in the room for me that already had that vision for, hey, we need to be going this direction. So.
Yeah, if I could add to that. The phase one, we're starting out with because you're right, the sewer is the challenge with this. So we're starting out with a pump station analysis, which is what the consultant is going to start working on to give us, really look at what are our 530 plus pump stations, what's the capacity of those. When we have that, that's going to give us a lot of information, and that's going to help inform the remainder of building the sewer model. But we're hopeful that that gives us, there's a shorter time span to get that information, and then the vision with that is to make that information available to developers, engineers, so and we have more information for when people come to us with their projects. And we don't go 3 months down the road into a project and everybody gets surprised because we find out that we're lacking capacity in some areas. So this should help inform that process.
I have a question follow up to that. A lot of my county district has pockets of older housing that's still on septic, and of course that impacts our stormwater program. We're pretty sure scientifically it does. I hear what you're doing for new development. I hope that this modeling will look at these pockets of areas that were built in the 60s and the 70s that are still on sanitary sewer. I know some areas have gotten some grants, but without grants, they're just not going to get the sewage, and they can't afford to do it themselves. So do you have any future plans for those areas on septic?
We do, and I appreciate I appreciate exactly what you're talking about. And for us, this is a little bit of that new staffing piece where we're going to look to bring some planners on board to kind of help address that. To this point, we've been very reactionary with what's just coming at us, right? New developments and that sort of thing, which makes it hard to address the exact situation that you're talking about. I think we all realize that septic tanks are a temporary solution to wastewater, right? Ultimately, we want to see that permanent public infrastructure be there to be available for those folks. From an environmental standpoint, from a cost standpoint, the whole 9 yards, it usually works out. There are challenges related to whenever you're moving in an existing area, just the restoration of roads and yards and everything that goes with it. And when we can partner on grants, that's a great way to deliver those types of projects. For us, it's not been something that we've been able to put a lot of focus on right now, but I do hope by bringing in some of that planning staff, not only are they looking at those pockets where you just don't have service or they're underserved by our facilities right now, but they're also, coordinating with all the planning entities here throughout the county, right, throughout our jurisdiction, to understand what their vision is for their own communities, because everyone's got their own unique vision. Oftentimes I've seen, something maybe one zoning where it's very, it's out in the county and the density is really low, but there may be an annexation plan or something coming where, I'll work with the mayor and they'll tell me, well, we're going to change the density here and it's going to be single family homes or whatever it may be. From our standpoint, we want to know those things because more people means wastewater flow, bigger stations, bigger pipes. By having some of these planning staff that we're envisioning for. In fact, we just advertised the first spot yesterday on our website. So we're not there, right? But we have a shared vision for trying to get there for just that type of project that you're talking about.
And I think the model, like you alluded to, the model's going to help us we're gonna be able to identify those and then what is the infrastructure that's needed and that's, we can start formulating where to put that.
A few months ago, we had a special committee that was appointed to look at underserved areas in Beaufort, Jasper County. Michael Bell was our chairman of that committee. Some of you may know Mike. He's been the longest serving board member that we have. And they've looked at several areas in our region to identify areas, mostly rural, not in town, but mostly rural, that don't have the infrastructure for sewer. And we're looking, and it's going to be down the road, as you say, but we're looking down the road as far as 10 years to get infrastructure to some of the places that don't have it. And so we are actively looking for places where we can convert septic to the sewer.
Yeah, thank you. Love what you're saying, really appreciate it. Obviously, a lot of this is very close and near and dear to my heart after spending 30 years there, watching those 530 lift stations be built and operating them. So I understand your difficulties there. And I appreciate your statement about meeting with our planning staffs, because one of the things, that this group looks at, especially Northern, is where the development's going to be built, how it's going to be built, and the density. And the infill is very important to the municipalities. We can't just keep expanding and growing further out into the county. If we can get this infrastructure in place efficiently inside the municipalities where the density can meet, where efficiency of services become good for all, I think it's important to look at our major corridors and look at what's happening and say, how do we make this property more valuable to get this stuff built so we keep everybody in the area. So we look forward. I know our planning staff is looking very forward to meeting with you. That's Noah. And I know that Craig is probably thinking the same thing with the city of Beaufort. So we look forward. We have lots of capital needs to create infill that literally the first thing is no sewer is available, they walk away.
Yeah.
And we've got to get over that hump so that we can get that first piece. However we do it as partners, that's something that needs to be looked at and looked hard at. It almost needs to be a separate focus of the Water Authority now, as things have changed in the 35 years since I was hired. So.
Mayor, I appreciate your comments. I think you're right on task, and we do see like a shared role in your guys' success, and we realize that we're a critical piece of that infrastructure. So we want to support you guys and have you guys get to that vision point for your own communities. We don't want to be a hurdle to you. So as we get opportunities and we get some of these staff on board that I'm talking about, we'd love to engage with your planners and yourself, even just to kind of look in your own community and give us your hot points. What are your hot topics? And if there's an opportunity for us to assist in it, whatever it may be, maybe it's sharing in a grant, if that's what we need to do to make it affordable for everybody, or maybe it's something we could add to our capital program. We'd love to be there. So we're excited about the opportunity.
No, I want to change the subject a little. So if you're talking about sewer, go ahead.
Well, similar. I wanted to kind of build off of Mayor DeVito's point that, this group and the jurisdictions have been doing some comprehensive planning since the late 90s. And I think since the Northern Regional Plan, the idea has been to try to concentrate the growth that's coming, right? We're seeing it now within sort of existing urban centers, and that incrementally over time we sort of build out, but work really hard to try to preserve that rural green belt and some of the more sort of rural outside edges of the county. Parts of St. Helena, for example, Sheldon. So I won't ask the question. I'll just say, what in your planning efforts, I hope that you're looking at our comp plans. I hope you're looking at like the Northern Regional Plan, because I'm certainly sensitive to people who don't have water, sewer authority, water or sewer today. But I also know that we have limited tools in how we control and contain growth. And I know that utilities, water and sewer being a major one, I'd just be nervous that like we run a major water sewer pipe like across the Whale Branch River, and then that just explodes sort of sprawl development in that part of the community, when for, again, 30 years we've been trying to say we don't want sprawl suburban development in certain areas. And so how do you align your planning efforts with our planning efforts? Because I know there's some landowners and developers who there'll be a conflict there.
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and that's why we're going to be making an effort to make sure we're all talking and having frequent communication, which is what's nice about this meeting. It's nice to I want to meet some people. So yeah, that's something definitely we need to be into more.
And I'd plug this group because this is the, for Northern Beaufort County, and then you have Soloco that gets everybody around the table. But this group for Northern Beaufort County is, all of your policymaking agencies with many of your planners. So it's a nice clearinghouse to get in front of all of us at one time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe just to help answer your question a little bit or pile on, like from our standpoint, you guys are helping give that vision to what's happening from the land and development standpoint. We are a supplement or a support because we provide that infrastructure piece. But if you've got thoughts of, hey, this is the priority for where our developing is, we want to be there, hand in hand with you to make sure that happens. We're not going out there and running infrastructure into, undeveloped areas with the hopes of trying to spur some development. That's not what we're doing. We want to have you guys provide us that level of leadership as to what we're doing, just so we get, hand in hand with you. And we hope, as we add some staff and continue down the road and all these tools are developing and everything just dovetails together.
Let me interject something too, just for a second, if you don't mind. We're gonna have a workshop in November. The board's gonna have a workshop to discuss where we're going in the future. And we'd like to maybe invite any of you that would like to participate in that workshop, get in touch with me or Verna, and we will put you on the program, let you tell us as a board, entire board, where we're going, what we're doing, and give us an update on your particular area. I'd like to hear from Beaufort and Port Royal and Bluffton and all the different municipalities to know what their specific plans are on record so that we can coordinate better. A lot of times things happen to us as an authority after it's going on. We don't hear about it till it's too late sometimes, and then we have to catch up. So it's good to know if we can get together ahead of time and know where you're going for the next year, 2 years, 3 years down the road. We can project out ahead of time what we're going to have to have. This would avoid us from having to do hiccups, and figure out where we're going to go from here.
That's a great point.
So if you'd like to get in on that.
That invitation include the Beaufort County Economic Development Board?
I'd be
as well?
happy to, yes.
Okay.
I'd be happy to. And I appreciate you participating in our meetings too, Mr. Glover. You were there yesterday on the phone, and he attends our meetings, and I appreciate that. That shows a great interest in what we're doing.
One last thing, I'll make a plug that I know that the city, the county and I are all working with. Soon there's gonna be a group coming to you to help us with low cost and workforce housing. One of the things we're all struggling with is what fees can we reduce, or what can we offer to those in the way of reduced impact fees, capacity fees, building permit fees, whatever that is how can we make it more attractive to build that style home in our communities? And, we hope that I understand why we have capital contribution fees. I get it, I know it, you're describing it here, you're ramping it up, it's gonna cost more, but we've got to look hard to say, how can we do something with this, no different than our fire impact fees or our road impact fees in that way. So I just want them, you have a number of board members here, and I wanted you to kind of hear that, if you haven't already gotten the ask, it's coming, and we're going to be thinking very hard on that subject as well.
Yeah, there's been some asks. No, and I think that goes with what Greg was talking about. We have a board workshop coming up, and there's part of our initiative. That I don't want to say that's underserved, but it's a different type of serving that, a population that may not be able to, it's a struggle. Right. And so I think that is something the board is very interested in and will be discussing.
Especially
we feel that issue of low-income housing in our hiring policies. We're having a hard time bringing people in with the cost of living in the low country of South Carolina. So we feel the same thing that the cities are feeling in terms of our recruitment of technical talent.
If we can find those right properties in the dense areas where maybe service already exists, and then satisfy the capacity need in a different way, then that draws that down. It brings them in where the transportation and the jobs and everything's already available, and that's kind of the conversation and discussion we all need to have.
Yeah, thanks.
I just wanted to add, the county had set aside funds because previously there was no discussion. It was a no deal with the Beaufort Jasper to work to provide those funds for your fees. But we'd like to continue that discussion because as we try to build more affordable housing, that the county's not going to be able to always pick that up necessarily, so. Yeah.
And we do offer we do have a fund for individual homeowners that helps pay for capacity fees to hook on. Which is great because when you talk about failing septic systems and bringing infrastructure to them, that's the other side of it is the private property side. And so that's a great funding source that we have to help cover those costs. But the affordability issue is big, and it was where I previously was, that it was a lot of conversation on that, so there'll be more to come.
Thank you. I was gonna say, you kind of mentioned it a few times, but I think from I don't know how Rob and Noah feel about it, but I mean, I feel like the city would like to kind of coordinate your development review process with our process and match that, maybe if we're Royal and the county.
Yeah, I think as a regional partner, it'd be great to be able to tell developers, you know, we know the timeline for Beaufort Jasper generally, and we can make sure that our review process is streamlined with that. That way they're only waiting on DHEC instead of DHEC and Beaufort Jasper.
With your input, because, and I haven't been here super long either, but what was happening is, at least in the city, is a lot of projects were kind of getting an unknown answer from Beaufort Jasper that they could be served. Then they were going all the way through a difficult process in the city and approved, and then they were told, well, we don't have capacity to serve you. It's gonna cost a lot of money.
Yeah, that's
And so if we could have that process, yeah, exactly. And I mean, it can be your process, we can match your process, but as long as there's that communication, so we can stop doing that, because that gives the cities and the towns a lot of liability, right? And then
A lot of
just
energy
creates
going
a lot
in.
of, and everybody's attacking all of us, right? You,
That's
us.
the finger pointing game, right?
And so,
Yeah, I think between that and the manual revisions, we'll see, that would be a huge benefit to us and to the development people that are coming to us.
I think to your point, I think there is an opportunity for us to improve our process and relationship and the way that we work together. And we're not there today, but let's have an opportunity. Let's find some time and get together and just see if we can find some ways to.
I'll bring up some history. I think maybe even before you, Sarah, history. I used to sit from BJWSA as an ex officio member on the Town of Port Royal's development review process. I would sit in their meeting every month and give them the Water Authority's perspective on what was happening. And there was an engineer from the engineering staff that sat on the City of Beaufort one. And so we were split up. Because neither one of us could do both. So we agreed to do that, and we sat for many, many years on the development review boards for both sides to help steer that, help them move that along, and where there was going to be roadblocks, where they needed to get in front of us sooner, and that kind of stuff in that aspect, and kind of give the other side. So that was something that was in place, fell out. Maybe it's a great conversation to have, especially as you're standing up a new board at the city, and what we're standing up ours as well. So maybe that's something we can start thinking about in a conversation. Now that you're increasing your engineering staff, the one behind you might be very interested, increasing your engineering staff in that way, we'd love to kind of strike up that conversation to see if that makes sense again to be part of those meetings once a month in that way.
Mayor, that makes 100% sense to me. I think that's just part of us being a partner and knowing what's going on in your communities.
I want to change the subject a little from sewer. I'm in a rural area, I need water. I need water services. And it's very difficult to get planning done because there's no developer that's doing the planning. So when we look at changing or building capacity for fire hydrants, which looking at the different sized lines, et cetera, there is no developer that's going to lead that charge. It's a community effort. How can you help? What can be done to assist in that area? There's going to be infrastructure money coming. There's a need to increase lines in the area so that if nothing else, fire hydrants can be installed. People are looking at that. They have water, but they can't have fire hydrants because of the capacity that's there. We want to try to improve that in a community, but we don't have a developer to say, we're going to develop this rural area, so we need fire hydrants. How can y'all help us with that?
I think that's where the planning component that we're talking about is gonna.
And Mr. Padgett talked about that, yes. I mean,
And I
how's that moving along, I guess, because,
yeah, it's, we need to look at the whole system and look where these issues occur, and of course, talking with you all where you see the problems. And, I mean, you're right, there's not a developer that's gonna come in there and just increase line sizes. So, as Paul mentioned, we need to scope the problem and then find, are there, what funding's available to help accomplish this? And working together to try to find solutions for these.
the discussion, I guess, I'm asking, what will it take to engage you from the community? I mean, do we need to have someone designated from the community?
You're thinking the right way. We have that vision that I've mentioned here today
Right.
about trying to bring in some planners, and we just literally advertised yesterday for our first spot to do that. The way I could see this working is that we can help sharpen that process a little bit as far as meeting with yourselves and helping find some of the stakeholders, like we can help organize meetings or host meetings or whatever it may be, set agendas, that sort of thing. But certainly we want to have engagement from stakeholders in each of those pockets of our county that we want to talk about servicing. To this point, we haven't really had that skill set in-house and haven't done a lot of that type of work. Now, as I take a deep breath and look at the whole of the world right now, or at least what's going on in our industry, I'll tell you that, I've been practicing for 7 years. There has never been a greater opportunity or time for grant money for this type of infrastructure at any point in my career as what there is today. And we've talked about that somewhat internally, about trying to be a little bit more proactive in that world, where we've been just kind of dealing with developers and trying to do our best to keep our heads under, above water. But we want to get to that point, and all this planning and those sort of things allow us to start putting together scopes of works and projects and potentially pursuing some grant funds. And that's a whole other conversation for us internally. But we want to try to be a community partner in that piece of that process. I don't think that ultimately we're going to do any of that stuff in vacuum. Like, we've got to have somebody like yourself tell us, like, well, this is the area that we're a little more concerned about fire protection or making sure we got water mains there. Because we're just not going to go out and just do this, because we don't have the funds from an infrastructure standpoint to do that. But
I don't want to miss the opportunity. The windows is, like you said, is there now for funding. That window may not be there tomorrow. So we want to capture it when we can. So
you and I are on the exact same page here. When you've got a developer that's bringing money to the table, we want him to help pay for that infrastructure. When we're dealing in the rural area, we don't have that. So our first place we're going to go is to the local county. Okay, but we need to get a grant, right? That's the only way we're going to, because these projects are so big and so expensive. There's no other way to make it go, right? But we, together, I think we could get to that point, having a vision, and then try to pursue what funding source makes the most sense and what our local match requirements and how we achieve that together, and all the getting down in the weeds of it, right? Today, we can't do those things as efficiently as I want us to be able to, but I'm very hopeful that even here inside the next 6 or 8 months, we can have some really meaningful conversations on that topic.
thank you.
Further comments, questions? Well, Rob?
Yeah, just had a comment. If you could stick around for 5 minutes. We're beginning a process, kind of a multi-jurisdictional process where we're looking at a shared land use vision, among the various jurisdictions of both Beaufort and Jasper County, and a little bit of Hampton. And so we see an opportunity, I guess, both, we want to know from y'all, what are the limitations for growth? Where are the pinch points for, capacity issues? But also, I think that as we move that forward, then that provides a really good framework to know, kind of in a broad sense, where we anticipate growing in a region. We're talking about some sort of shared future land use plan among the jurisdictions.
I think that's great. I think this is exactly where we want to get with these conversations. For us, it's a very like blocking and tackling because we're in football season type approach to this stuff. We have 500 plus lift stations, each one with their own unique challenges, and many of them are piggybacked on each other. So as I make changes here, it can certainly impact those going downstream. So it kind of starts with what is your shared land use and how does that then feed in for the amount of wastewater that we should anticipate from that area, right? And then we can look at a more granular approaches to what's going on with our lift stations and how we can help support that down the road.
Right.
And everything I'm talking about, that's, to us, that's the planning piece that we really want to get to be able to do.
Yeah, once we get that sewer model built, the sewer model's one thing, but then the master planning comes after that. That's where that land use is huge. We need to have the information from everyone here in order to do that plan. That sewer model isn't gonna do us any good unless we use it to, we can use it for development, but we can also use it for master planning. And that's where all the information is coming from, is from you all.
All right.
I think we need to emphasize cooperation, but I think we also need to recognize that we don't have the resources to meet every need that's out there in Beaufort and Jasper counties. At our board meeting yesterday, we were advised that the cost of expansion of our Cherry Point wastewater plant is $116 million, which is a whole lot more than what we had anticipated a year or so ago based on inflation and on supply chain and all of those kinds of issues. So we got some of the same issues that each of the municipalities and governmental entities have in terms of the availability of resources in order to do it. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't try to take advantage of grants and things like that, but there are limits in terms of what we can do in terms with the amount of funding that we have available to help. So I think the idea of a cooperation, communication, prioritization are important things for us to talk about as we're working together. But we have limits on the availability of resources that we have, just like the cities and the counties have also.
We've seen huge increases in our capital costs just lately. And what did they say yesterday? It goes up when a certain percentage per month, every delay we have. I mean, it's significant.
For us, it's millions of dollars a month, so.
So it's something that we're, to Andy's point, it's really straining, even the projects we have planned.
You're no longer getting RFP responses that says the price is good for a year.
No.
You're lucky if you get 30 days. If you're lucky if you get 30 days down. The price is good for 30 days. You don't sign, it goes up.
One of the quotes we had yesterday was 15-day window.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you gotta make a decision now.
You gotta be ready to move fast.
And hopefully that, that levels off, but yeah, I think that makes it all the more important to try to work together to see, how we can be efficient, number one, and then how we could possibly fund some of these projects.
All right. Thank you very much. On behalf of the committee, thank you for being here. Thank you for your presentation. Thank you for identifying the opportunities for the communication, cooperation, and partnering. And we'll certainly look to take advantage of those opportunities and appreciate the invite to the workshop that you're having next month. So lots for us to think about, consider, and move forward.
November.
In November.
It's coming to 30. Yeah, as soon as we get those dates, that'd be great. We'll see if we can get it on the calendar.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome to stay.
The new staff.
You're welcome to stay if you wish. We try to keep it to an hour. We've got one other item to talk about. Rob, you want to, Alice, Rob? Give us an update on the Soloco Regional Growth Task Force.
And they met Tuesday after the Soloco meeting, so last day for that, making great progress.
I'm working on it.
Yeah.
I'm working on it.
So this, I'll just start out. I mean, this is an initiative by Soloco. I believe it was back in April, the issue was brought up that they're really interested in some sort of shared vision for future growth, that would cross jurisdictional boundaries. And out of that came this idea to create a subcommittee called the SoLoco Growth Subcommittee. And I think I'm gonna wait till
Yes, no pressure.
yeah. Did you find it on the?
I got it. I'm just trying to get it to show up there.
I came from California, just recently. To be honest, I forgot to read the agenda. And I didn't think that this presentation should probably be on that computer until. So.
There we go.
Okay.
Very good.
So out of this came this idea of a SoLoco growth committee. And SoLoco, if you go to the next slide.
You might even be able to hit that arrow right behind your head. You might even have power. I don't know. You might be able to.
Bring up options, yeah.
Maybe not.
Oh,
Maybe not.
Swipe.
So much for the touch screen.
yeah, well, that'd be nice if you just kind of like.
Try it.
Yeah, that's what I
Try it.
I think it works.
This way?
Just hit it.
We'll see?
No good.
No, guess not. Never mind.
Oh, well,
let older brand than we do.
we'll be back in the 20th century.
Scary.
Okay.
We're back to next slide, please.
Yeah, so this committee is, is basically made up of planners or managers, town managers, assistant town managers. So it's a staff-driven group. We met first in early July, and at that point, they appointed me as chair. Dan Frazier with the town of Bluffton is vice chair. But we're really, we've had 3 meetings. The 2 meetings we had it over in council chambers, for lack of a better place to meet. We actually needed a bigger table the next time. We just had we had some people, Coastal Conservation League joined, Mary Ryan, or Dave Trail, or it was Dave Trail, yeah, and Carol Crutchfield with the school district has joined us. So we've had a lot of interest, in seeing this process move forward. And so what we did is we put together what we believed to be a basic work program. And last Tuesday, we presented that to SoLoco. And so what you're looking at is that presentation we gave. If you go to the next slide. The idea, and this should sound very familiar because a lot of this is modeled after the work that we've done in Northern Beaufort County, but it's defining a shared future growth, conservation, and land use framework for the SoLoco region while recognizing the unique qualities of each local jurisdiction. And, I think that we've all learned from the northern part of the county the benefit of this approach. We have this now, we have the shared vision so that as the county or the municipalities grow, there's not this, going back to the early 2000s where there's, anytime somebody does something locally, the neighboring jurisdictions are like, what are you up to? And I think right now we generally are singing from the same sheet of music, and it has really helped us, kind of work together as in the northern region. The idea is to have a similar kind of framework for the whole SoLoco region.
Rob, for the people who don't know, what are they classifying as the region?
Well, the region here, and I would say that this would be a shared vision across the region, which is primarily Beaufort and Jasper County, but really most of it is focusing seaward of I-95. There's some areas of Hardyville, some areas of Yemassee that kind of go on the other side of 95, but generally that area is kind of more rural, and we'd like to bring in Richland as well. Right now they're not a partner in SoLoco, but so that's the region. And when we look at that region, Northern Beaufort County, we already have a good growth framework for Northern Beaufort County. The idea is not, we may use this process if there's anything we want to take another look at, but the idea is not to, reinvent the wheel for Northern Beaufort County. In Southern Beaufort County, when we look at Bluffton, Hilton Head, not a lot of radical changes over there. The real focus area, I think, is primarily south of the Broad from 170 going west, looking at where Beaufort County, Jasper County, City of Hardyville, Bluffton, all kind of meet. And then I would say another area would be Yemassee, and they're in the process of doing their comprehensive plan. So this is a really good opportunity to work in conjunction with that effort. So, it's that whole region, but, a lot of the effort is looking at these areas where we share jurisdiction. And a lot of that is kind of like that as we're growing west in the southern part of the county. If you go to the next slide, the components of this, once again, we really looked at the Northern Regional Plan as a model. A unified future land use plan, this is sort of like a 20,000-foot view, similar to what we have with the Northern Regional Plan, where you have future land use districts that kind of give the broad expectations of the character, the intensity of land use in those areas, and provide a framework for when future rezonings or annexations, come across to each local jurisdiction to follow that land use plan. Growth boundaries, I think Bluffton and Hardyville kind of already have growth boundaries defined. We want to get those things mapped, look at them, and kind of look at them and how they work across jurisdictional boundaries and into the region. And then, once again, defining the rules of the municipalities and counties within and outside the growth boundaries. We talked about shared standards that have cross-jurisdictional impacts. This is actually in our discussion at SoLoco, it seemed to be, when it comes to stormwater, there were concerns about that, that balance between working jointly as a region and providing that local, recognizing the differences between the local communities. And so, that is something that I think, these first three steps are the big steps that need to be taken. And then once we have that, where are these shared interests? It might be corridor planning. We have 170 with Beaufort County on one side, Jasper on the other, with Hardyville thrown in there a few places. So that, there might be focus on some areas like that where having joint standards or looking in greater detail makes sense. We go to the next slide. And so this really gets to, I guess, when we were talking about Beaufort Jasper, how to get there. And we're kind of looking at a broad steps that we will be taking as staff and then bringing this forward to SoLoco as we move through this process. But we're really starting with sharing information. Bluffton, Hardyville have a lot of approved development and large development agreements and PUDs. Beaufort County has different developments coming online. Just sharing that information, knowing what those numbers are, where they're occurring, maybe a little more information about what things are more imminent than others and what things are maybe approved 15 years ago and nothing much has happened. All of that. And then looking at existing infrastructure, and that's where consultation with Beaufort Jasper, what is the availability of infrastructure? What are the constraints to growth? We want to look at utilities, electric, broadband, schools, work closely with engineering and ALCOG for roads. So really taking all of those things that are needed for growth and are impacted by growth and making sure that we're working together. And I probably need to mention here, we're also looking at those natural areas, looking at preserved lands, constraints, natural constraints to growth, areas that we, want to, really prevent from developing at high density residential and along across the region, identifying the shared vision for what those areas are. Having all that information together and then start to focus in, okay, what does that mean in terms of a future land use plan? So that's the idea moving forward. So if we go to the next slide. And, once again, we want to work closely with all the people who are impacted by growth. All people are, if we are targeting growth, do we have the infrastructure there to support it? So, there's definitely, we want to work with that, and then we're going to be working closely with Soloco. Really, the model for moving forward is the state of South Carolina is a cooperative model. We have nothing compelling us to work together, so it's that once again an IGA, all agreeing to join in and be part of the process. So in that way, I think the positive is nothing's being forced on anyone. It's kind of all, agreeing to come to the table and do this. I think the downside is, really it's as good as people willing to continue to participate. In Northern Beaufort County, we've been doing this for more than 15 years. So I think hopefully, optimistically, as a region, we'll see the benefit of this process. If you go to the next slide, what we're looking at is kind of the deliverables, would be a future land use map, defining the broad future land use districts, those areas we want to target preservation, growth boundaries, and intergovernmental agreement. And then the other thing, and this was something in Southern Beaufort County that was one of the outcomes of the Southern Regional Plan, is defining a threshold for projects that we share with each local jurisdiction. Right now, the county has a rezoning in 170, we consult Bluffton, we consult Buckhead. So bringing in more partners into that process is something we're doing as well. So that's kind of the framework. It's something that really is right now is we're looking at the capacity of our existing staffs to move this forward. But we would really like to keep this momentum and be able to come back to Soloco periodically and to this board to show our progress. So with that,
Questions, comments? Thank you, Rob, for sharing that. We look forward to your.
I clearly can see that the Water Authority is looking forward to joining this group.
By all means. All right, thank you, Rob.
Rob, thanks for the update. Alice, thanks for participating and sitting in on those meetings.
All right, we're at the last point in the meeting for our future agenda items. I think on our future topics list, talking with the Economic Development Commission, John O'Toole, inviting him to be in order. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, we have an issue for September's meeting. David Sewer and I will be here.
Just asked me if I would chair it, because I've sat in that seat a few times. I will be out of the country also at that date. So you'll be out of the country? Yeah,
No, I will be out of the country.
Is anybody going to be here?
High school reunion.
So do we want to cancel September's, do we want to cancel September's and just move on from there? That's the question, I think.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Would anybody like to make a motion to?
Should want to get designations.
Well, we don't need to vote on it, I guess.
No, I think send out a poll and then send out an email.
Yeah. All right. Well, right at the moment, we'll look to have our next topic, the Economic Development Commission, and a couple of updates, maybe from the regional Soloco. And if there's anything moving forward regarding the MPC status, structure, and so on.
Yeah, but by the finalize, we'll have some updates. And then could I suggest a future agenda item to our list?
Sure, absolutely.
So Beaufort City Council at our work session on Tuesday, we discussed, we don't really have a name for it yet, but some type of like climate resiliency or some type of task force. We had a meeting at City Hall with a affordable housing professional. She was coming down from Greenville in her Tesla and called and said she was going to be about an hour late because she had to go to Hardeeville because they were the closest place with a Tesla supercharger so that she could get enough juice to drive to Beaufort to meet with us and then get far enough home. So that was sort of a light bulb moment for us that, whether you like it or not, EVs are the future. We've had a number of conversations with staff and council about what's the public role in putting in charging stations, right? Should they be at public facilities? Should they be free? Should they charge? What's our regulation look like? I'm told that folks are coming in to put charging stations and not all of us have clear policy and clear regulation in place to be able to allow those. So that there's an EV component, I think. Been reading a fair amount about the heat effect that's happening. This summer's been particularly hot. That's another one where I don't know if we have clear policy that's sort of woven through our framework. So like when we do road projects, right, is it as simple as putting more street trees in for shade? Is it some of these creative coatings that cities are using? And then the third piece is a renewable energy piece. City put solar panels on 4 of our facilities a few years ago. It's been working really well. Should we do more? Should we do less? Also on the regulatory side, are we prohibiting renewable deployment by the private sector? Is there a way we can help? So anyways, there's a lot of unanswered questions, I think, from the city standpoint. We talked about forming our own small task force just for the city, but then someone brought it up that maybe it's a regional conversation with some of the other partners like the county and Port Royal. And maybe we have a joint task force and bring in some high horsepower. We talked to the Coastal Conservation League and to the Open Land Trust. They have some resources around the state they think they could get to the table. So I just plant that seed for further thought, and then maybe in the next couple of months we can circle back around and have a conversation about it.
Do you want to give that a title? I mean, you've talked a lot of different subjects. It's kind of a resiliency climate task force.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a little political word, the whole thing, but maybe resiliency task force or.
Good. Yes, we'll put that down as a future potential item to discuss. All right, I will send out a notice to see if we have a quorum for September 22nd meeting. If not, we'll defer our meeting until October. Anybody gonna be out of the country in October?
That I'm aware of.
All right,
Unless they run me out of here.
with that in order, unless there's any other questions or comments?
Motion to adjourn, Mr. Chair.
Second.
All in
Thank you,
favor?
everybody.
All right, thank you all.
All of y'all.
Wow.